You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Ulises Sambrano, and on behalf of Kevin Weiss, we are the hosts of Locked On Rays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making Locked On Rays your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Rays is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Rays. Also, be sure to follow us on social media like Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Rays. And you can always email us at lockedonrays@gmail.com. If you have been an avid listener of this podcast, like of course you are, you might think, hey, this sounds a little bit different. This is not a duo podcast. And you're right. Kevin Weiss is not available for this episode nor the next. So we're usually bulk guys, me and Kevin. We usually go, 3 innings each, and then give the ball to the stable, right, to finish it off. Well, this time I've been asked to go deep, go 60, go 70. Can you do that? And, well, we're about to find out, all of us together, if that is going to be a good thing for all of us here. So, of course, we have mailbag episodes on Wednesdays. That's what we usually try to do. However, you guys have been responding so well to our call to action that we had so many that we were saying, you know what, let's do a Tuesday and Wednesday mailbag episode and get all of those questions, concerns, and issues regarding Rays baseball answered in a timely manner. So right now we're going to go to 2 emails, actually 1 email and 1 Instagram that are in the same vein. From Joseph Clark, he says, hello. When are the Rays going to realize that hitting a B-Lowe in the leadoff spot is not the answer? He needs to be hitting around 5th or 6th and Wander leading off. And David White on Instagram says, Brandon Lowe is struggling in the leadoff position. Understatement in parentheses. Who could you see being a regular leadoff hitter? So, this is probably one of the biggest concerns right now with the Tampa Bay Rays lineup is the fact that, look, Brandon has not been himself at all. And it seems like October has just followed him in a very creepy way in April. And hopefully that stops soon, but it really has been frustrating to see. I mean, let's look at the numbers in the season. Not 83 at-bats, 181 average, a 250 on base, 325 slugging. That's a 575 OPS, only 3 home runs. It's not the pretty numbers that you're expecting a guy who's been an all-star, a guy who has been an MVP of your team, to put up, and not at all. And if we dig deeper a little bit, I mean, everything looks not as you would expect. With percentage in the 19th percentile, the K rate 35th percentile, the hard hit percentage 18th percentile. I mean, that's just not Brandon Lowe and who he is. The walk rate is at 50 in the 52nd percentile, which is okay to see, but regardless, when you move on from an Austin Meadows, when you move on from a Joey Wendell, who both, by the way, are doing just fine in the respective teams, you expect the big boys that are still on your lineup to produce. And Brandon Lowe really has not been that guy to produce for this offense in this season so far. Now, I did do a little bit of digging into why, or at least, where he fits in the lineup the best. And unfortunately for those who, like myself, think that maybe he shouldn't be batting leadoff, well, I have very bad news. I don't think that's going to happen. I really think that the Rays really love seeing Brandon Lowe at the top of the lineup, and I can show you by giving you the numbers from 2021. In 2021, he batted first 239 at bats. 239 at bats, he was batting first. The second most at bats he had in the lineup was batting fourth, and that was at 85. So from 239 to 85, you can already see the drop off, right? So if there's that big of a drop off, why on earth would they do it? Would they back him off from batting first if they have shown, the data has shown them that no, this is his optimal place? And of course, when you look at the sample size regarding all of his spots in the order, the best one is, sample size considered, batting first. Why? Well, his average is a 276 when he's batting leadoff, a 364 on base, a 611 slug, which means he has a 975 OPS. I mean, if you compare it to the second most, it's 100 points plus that he's better when he's batting leadoff. So I understand the frustration, Joseph. I understand the the grabbing of the forehead, which I'm doing right now as we speak, David. But it's not going to happen. They're going to stick with Brandon Lowe at first. I think they shouldn't. I think they should probably give a guy like Manuel Margot a chance at leading off. I would love to see that speed and what that can do in the base paths. Taylor Walls, a guy who's heating up. Can he be a guy that you do a little bit of the traditional hit and run type of plays with him at the top? Even Yandy Diaz. I mean, you could really get some good production by having Yandy at the top of the lineup. But those are three guys, David, that I think would serve well at the leadoff spot. But of course, going back to the whole premise, Brandon Lowe struggling as a leadoff guy, I think he would be struggling regardless right now. And so he's a very cold, hot, streaky guy. You're not going to get consistency from him. And well, you can get consistency from him when he's cold. He's going to be cold. And when he's hot, he's going to be the best player alive. But when you really want the 1-for-4s and all that, that's not going to be him. And that can be frustrating. That can really be frustrating. And so I think as a fandom, we're all feeling that right now. But I'm going to sound like a broken record by the end of this season. Patience. We have to be patient. Honestly, it's been 22 games, 23 games. We can't think that this is the Brandon Lowe of the now or the future. I think he's a cold, streaky guy that, maybe he is more of a June, July, August type of fellow. And that's something that we're going to have to get used to. I mean, didn't we get used to Willy Adames not being the same player at home and on the road? Well, foreshadowing, maybe that's something that we see happen with Brandon Lowe in the future, but that's maybe for another day. We have so much more to get through. I hope you are enjoying this so far. And if you're enjoying this so far, well, with spring in the air, it's time for renewal and growth. So personally and professionally, for both. And as your small business grows, LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Maybe the Rays are posting jobs on there. I mean, the bullpen needs some help right now. That depth is really getting tested right now. So maybe they're on LinkedIn. You can also post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Also, we want to tell you about betonline.net, which is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Find all of the latest sports development, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. And we all know how Kevin Weiss feels about esports. He don't like it. Anyway, head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Moving on from the first couple of mailbag questions, mailbag cues, we have this one next from Alex Devoid. He says, I have a hot take. I want Mejia in at catcher more than Zunino. Don't get me wrong. I love Z, but right now we need offense, and Mejia's bat is way more consistent, and I really think his defense has improved over last year, and there isn't too much missing defensively when he's catching versus Zunino. I really think if given the opportunity, this could be his breakout year. Also, Rene Pinto has looked decent too. Thank you for reading. Well, thank you for writing to us, Alex. So we appreciate any and all DMs and emails that come our way, especially voice memos. Voice memos would be pretty handy on this type of episode. But anyway, Alex, you're not going to find a bigger fan of Francisco Mejia in this podcast than myself. I love the fact that he's an anti-catcher hitter. And by that, I mean he's a contact guy who has some sneaky pop, who has some sprint speed to him. I mean, he just brings a different element, a different facet of what a catcher at the dish with a bat means than we have seen before. And there have been guys like that. Obviously, he's not a unicorn of sorts, but is not the prototypical catcher with a bat. That usually is more on the Zunino side. And maybe not so much power, but you get my drift. Low batting average, not a lot of contact, a lot of whiff and chase rates. So it's nice to see a guy who isn't prototypical, and that's Francisco Mejia. I do have to disagree on not losing a lot defensively when Mejia is catching than when Zunino is catching. I disagree with that. I still think Zunino is head, neck, shoulders above Francisco Mejia defensively. And I think that's an opportunity for Mejia to get better and kind of establish himself not as a backup catcher, but as a day-to-day catcher. I still think he does need to work a little bit better. The blocking, I think there's been some plays in 2022 where you see that he's not ready to take that mantle as a starter catcher. I think he has a possibility, and I think he has the ceiling for it. It's just defensively, he needs a little bit more work. I don't really care about the framing so far right now, because with the framing, it's going to get eroded by the time that robot umpires are coming. So for me, that right now, yeah, you can steal a strike, and I know that's valuable. I think I didn't know if I heard it or read it in an article. It was something like 10 strikes or 10 pitches that are pulled in as strikes basically saves your team a run. So that's something to consider. When you have somebody behind the dish that can do that, you're also helping your team win when you can frame those pitches. But really would be, for me, the blocking and the running game. You got to be a little bit better at controlling those two things. And I don't think Francisco is just there yet, but I think he can. And when you have a guy like Mike Zunino with the tools, with the background experience, I mean, I would think Francisco is just breathing, sweating, and learning from Mike every day. And I think he has gotten better, but he's just not there yet. Offensively speaking, yeah, I think the bat plays more right now. When your team is struggling to put more than 3 runs on the board, yeah, you need guys who can put the ball in play. You don't need so many whiffs. You don't need so many empty swings, and which has been the case for Mike Zunino in 2022. Not a lot of damage, only 1 home run so far. So Francisco Mejia would be the guy to have in the lineup. But then again, how can you have the guy when there's COVID protocols? So it's kind of a moot point saying, I want Francisco in there. Well, yeah, but I mean, he literally can't be in the lineup. So we'll see. And, shout out to my boy, Rene Pinto. I mean, you know me, if you've listened to this podcast, and if you can see, God, I hate this. Boom, right there. The Venezuelan hat. I always give my boys the Venezuelan bump. Rene Pinto is Venezuelan, so I always want him to succeed and do well. And it's been nice to see him in a Rays uni, personally speaking, just to have a Venezuelan player that I can root for. And he already went deep. He has as many home runs as both Francisco Mejia and Mike Zunino. So we'll see what they see of Rene Pinto. I mean, he did pretty decent in I believe he played in the Dominican League, in the Winter League this year. And so he's a guy that toiled in the minors too, almost a decade, 7-8 years. So it's been a minute, and his major league debut really came at a time when, you got to think that these guys have dreamed about that spot in their life so much, and when it finally comes, they want to take it. And I think a guy like Rene is going to be very, very motivated to keep up in MLB, and hopefully that comes with the production. But we can't do anything about the playing time, but I do see where you're coming from. If you need more offense, get the offensive hitting catcher there. But I don't think it's as black and white as I used to think. You need guys, especially with the Rays, with the amount of arms that they go through. You have to have somebody who feels really comfortable all the time with as many as 12, 13, 15, 17 pitchers in a week's worth of time. I think that doesn't come easy, and I think that comes easier to a guy like Mike Zunino, not only because of his expertise and background, but because he's just good at that. That's one of the things that he really does bring. And we talked about that with Colin Poche when he was on the show. And if you haven't listened to that episode, I suggest you do. It's on YouTube. There's a playlist for player interviews, and you can find all the player interviews that we've done there. But yes, Mike Zunino is instrumental at how well the Rays do with their pitching year in and year out. Before we get to our last mailbag question of the day, I do have to tell you guys about a place that can save you both time and money, and that is Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership? That doesn't make sense, guys. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could ever need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Well, we're on the third segment, people. We have made it. I think I've let in maybe a couple runs, but I think it's definitely a quality start. I am biased, so I'm going to give myself a quality start. But you know what? The pen wants some rest. So I'm going all the way, guys. I know it's race baseball, but I'm going all 9 innings. Here we go. The last mailbag question comes from Brenna, who has given us a couple before on Instagram. And she says, mailbag question, guys, something I haven't really heard anyone talk about in all the discussions surrounding the Rays base running woes. Can any of the blame be passed on to new first base coach Chris Prieto? Linares already tends to be overly aggressive with his green light. Is it possible there's some bad coaching on the base paths? Thank you, Brenna, for writing to us. Always keep doing that. We love it when you guys participate in the show. So thank you for that. Good question. Look, I think just like we have said about Josh Lowe, Taylor Walls, um, rookie guys that need to be acclimated to their new role. The same goes with Prieto. I do think that the constancy, the stability of having year in, year out the same coaches, Ozzie Timmons and Linares, and before that it was Baldelli and Montoyo or Quattraro and third, like that continuity, that does help. That does help. And it is very difficult to learn all of your runners, your players that are on first, and work that out. And then not only that, but they have to know a little bit of the opposition as well. So it's a tough gig, first base. I'm maybe not the toughest gig in all of baseball, but it's definitely a tough position. And I do think that there's some learning on the job that's happening right now. I think that's going to get cleaned up. I don't think it's going to be a major DNA characteristic of this team. Because this team does have really good base runners. I mean, even Brandon Lowe, for all the negativity that Brandon Lowe is suffering right now because of his lack of production, he's a really good base runner. He is a really, really adept base runner, and he's not fast, but he knows how to run the bases. Same thing with Taylor Walls, a really good base runner. Manuel Margot, really good base runner. Yandy Diaz has gotten faster this season. Harold Ramirez his sprint speed is way faster than you would think. So this team does have, and Kevin Kiermaier, hello, have we forgotten about the face of the franchise for the last, 8 years? Wander Franco. This team is athletic. This team does have the speed. But I do understand that there have been some, I don't know if it's early season jitters. I don't know if it's been miscommunication, maybe is what you're inferring. But it hasn't looked as sharp as we have grown accustomed to. And Rays baseball, the Rays way, has been pitching and defense doing the fundamentals right, and then everything else will just fall into place. That's why it feels odd this season, because the fundamentals aren't really being executed as well as they have in the past. So then the defense has looked shoddy from guys you expect to be Gold Glove winners. I don't want to say this, but it does feel like spring training was a bit short, and we all know why. MLB owners, but it seems like there has been a little bit of spring training in April. It just feels that way. And I may be wrong, but I'm watching the games, and it just feels like sometimes not a lot of PFP was done, or there's not enough time to know who is going to cover the base, or should I go to third when there's the ball is right in front of me? You know who I'm talking about. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, good. You didn't have to watch that, and that was a depressing end to a game. So yeah, I see where you're coming from, Brenna, and I think this team is not like that. I just like I don't think Brandon Lowe is the player that he is right now. I also think that the whole team is not going to be inefficient on the pace paths. I think that's something that they're usually really good at, and I think that we're going to see the trend upwards as the season goes. But that's a really good mailbag question, because we usually don't have one of those, so I appreciate the heck out of that. And I appreciate the heck out of all of you, because you stuck with me for this episode by myself. I did it. Look, that's it. There's no more show. Thank you for making Locked On Rays your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On Bets podcast. It's also free and available on all platforms. Again, I'm Ulises Sambrano. You'll have me again by myself on Wednesday's Mailbag episode, part 2. So stay tuned for that. Again, thank you so much. Stay safe, and we're going to talk to you very soon.